My daughter preferred her boyfriend's birthday to his mother's funeral. I watched her from the doorway, the morning sunlight streaming over her perfect, careless posture, the way she laughed softly at her phone, scrolling through pictures, completely oblivious to the grief she ignored just hours before. Her father me stood silently in the kitchen, coffee in hand, watching her. My hands were steady, my voice quiet, but my heart hammered inside my chest. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a reflection of everything I feared: selfishness, entitlement, and a lack of basic understanding of consequences. She hummed a cheerful tune as she brushed her hair, completely unaware I was in the house. The funeral was still fresh in my mind, the casket, the tears, the quiet moments of grief. And here she was, celebrating a birthday that mattered to her, while the woman who raised her boyfriend, the woman who had passed, lay in the earth, and no thought crossed her mind. I didn't yell, I didn't confront her, I didn't even sigh. I just waited. Because I had already decided that actions would speak louder than words. She finally noticed me, holding the coffee cup, leaning against the counter. Her smile faltered slightly, the kind that was polite but not genuine. "Morning, Dad," she said. Her tone was light, almost airy, as if yesterday hadn't even happened. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I just placed the coffee on the counter and studied her face. There was guilt there, tiny and flickering, but it was buried under layers of arrogance and self-centeredness. I need your signature," she said suddenly, fidgeting with her phone. Her voice was hesitant, uncertain. The tiny crack in her composure told me she knew she had crossed a line. I raised an eyebrow. Signature for what? Her hands shook slightly as she pulled a stack of papers from her bag. It's just some legal thing for the house. I need it today. Please, Dad, I didn't mean. I cut her off with a slow shake of my head. You didn't mean what? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She hadn't expected me to speak so firmly. She hadn't expected confrontation without anger. Her confidence wavered. I didn't realize it mattered," she admitted finally. I looked down at the papers. They were neatly stacked, standard legal forms, and she hadn't even read them carefully. Just assumed I would sign blindly because she was my daughter. I smiled faintly, not a warm smile, but the kind that carries control, certainty, and a quiet storm beneath it. "Tomorrow," I said softly, "you'll understand what you asked for." Her confusion deepened. Tomorrow? But I need it today. I said tomorrow. My voice was calm, no anger, no threats. Just certainty. She stared at me, eyes wide, lips parted, trying to decipher the quiet power I held. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just let her squirm in the suspense of not knowing what was coming. The tension in the room was sharp, almost suffocating. Her cheerful air from minutes ago had vanished. Now she felt a flicker of fear. She didn't know what I had planned, but she sensed she had underestimated me. I'll wait then," she muttered, lowering her gaze. She had no choice. She had no leverage. I controlled this moment. I placed a pen on the counter, but didn't touch it. I simply let her stare at it, letting her imagination fill in what would happen when I finally signed. Her phone vibrated. A message from her boyfriend. She glanced at it, then back at me. Anxiety flickered across her face. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Because she knew she was being tested. And in that silence, I could see the cracks forming. Her arrogance was melting into uncertainty, her certainty into dread. I leaned slightly forward, eyes on her, letting the quiet build. The room felt smaller, heavier, and every tick of the clock amplified the suspense. Her breaths grew shallow. She didn't know what she had asked for. She didn't know the storm I held in my hands. The morning light slanted through the blinds, casting long shadows across the papers and the kitchen floor. Every line, every fold of those documents contained consequences she hadn't imagined. I picked up the papers slowly, letting my movements deliberate and almost theatrical. Her eyes followed every motion. "Sign here," I said softly, pointing at a line that she assumed was routine. She nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. She hadn't read the fine print. She hadn't imagined the truth hidden in the ink and clauses she trusted blindly. As she scribbled her name, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not of malice, but of inevitable justice. The pen left the paper, her signature now etched permanently. I held back a smile. She had no idea what she had just done. And soon, everything she built would unravel. Because I had signed something too. Something that would destroy her life in ways she could never imagine. She handed me the papers, still smiling nervously, thinking she had won. Thinking she had manipulated the situation. Thinking she was in control. She was wrong. And when the consequences hit tomorrow morning, the world she thought she could control would crumble, leaving only the truth she refused to see. I set the papers aside. My eyes met hers. Her confident expression faltered under the weight of my gaze. She didn't know it yet, but she would soon. And in that moment, the calm before the storm was enough to make her shiver. The night fell faster than she expected, dark clouds swallowing the last remnants of daylight. She left the house clutching her bag, moving quickly down the quiet street, not daring to look back. Her heels clicked against the pavement, sharp echoes that seemed to chase her every step. She thought she was in control, that I would never act, that my calm silence meant weakness. I watched from a distance, hidden under the shadow of the trees lining the sidewalk. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, soaking her hair, her clothes, and the bag she carried. She didn't notice, lost in her own panic, lost in the false sense of relief she felt after I let her sign the papers. She tried to call someone, her boyfriend, maybe a friend, but the screen went black. The battery had died. Her fingers shook as she tapped futilely, eyes wide, mind racing. She stopped in the middle of the empty road, the rain pelting down, wind tugging at her coat. I stepped closer, keeping to the shadows, careful not to reveal myself yet. I let her panic grow, watching the arrogance and entitlement she wore like armor slowly peel away. Every shiver, every slip on the wet pavement, every quick glance over her shoulder was part of the lesson she needed. A stray dog wandered from the bushes, sniffed at her bag, and scampered away. She jumped back, startled, eyes scanning the darkness. The streetlights flickered. The trees swayed violently with the wind, shadows dancing around her, and she realized she was utterly alone. Not a single car passed. Not a single neighbor peeked out. The world she thought she owned was indifferent. Her breathing became jagged. She sank to the curb, clutching her bag like it was a lifeline. Tears mingled with rain. Every plan she had made for herself, every thought of control, every hope that she had manipulated me into submission, all of it evaporated in the storm. I stayed in the shadows, letting the suspense build. She had no idea the real storm hadn't even started. The papers she signed were only the beginning. She thought it was a routine signature, a trivial formality. She didn't know the consequences were carefully hidden in every clause. Lightning flashed overhead, briefly illuminating her face, pale, anxious, terrified. She screamed into the storm, voice cracking. Why is this happening? I just wanted it to be mine." No one answered. No one came. She realized she couldn't call for help, couldn't rely on anyone. Every privilege, every plan she had counted on failed. And in that failure, the full weight of her recklessness began to press down. I approached slowly, each step measured, deliberate. She sensed it, the quiet control I radiated, but couldn't see me clearly. Her heart raced, every nerve on fire. She shivered from the cold and the fear, realizing that the calm father she underestimated had orchestrated a trap she didn't even know existed. She tried to stand, brushing mud off her coat, trying to regain composure. She dialed again, her phone dead. The storm had taken away even the smallest escape route. The shadows around her seemed to tighten, the trees swaying closer, the wind roaring louder. I stepped closer, now within a few feet. Her eyes darted around, and in a fleeting moment, she caught a glimpse of me. Bald head glistening in the rain, beard dripping, eyes locked onto her. A jolt of terror ran through her. You're here," she stammered. What are you doing?" I said nothing. I simply watched, letting the silence do the work I didn't need to do with words. Her mind raced, piecing together the truth she had avoided for months, the arrogance that led her here, and the storm she had created for herself. She sank to the curb again, burying her face in her hands. The storm beat down, her clothes clinging to her like punishment, every drop of rain a reminder of how exposed and powerless she truly was. I stepped closer still, and she finally looked up, eyes wide, realizing she couldn't escape me, not that she could have run anyway. Her phone vibrated weakly with a notification, but she ignored it, too consumed by the terror of what was coming. She had asked for my signature. She had demanded control. And now, with every second that passed, the trap I set was closing in. Her breaths came fast and shallow. She tried to steady herself, to call for help again, but no one came. The street was empty, the world silent except for the roar of the rain and the occasional crack of thunder. She could feel it, the weight of consequences pressing down, inescapable. The arrogance, the selfishness, the disregard for life and respect, it all led here. I finally spoke, voice calm, low, unshakable. "You thought you controlled this. You thought signing those papers was enough. You were wrong." Her lips trembled. What do you mean?" I knelt slightly, letting the storm wrap around us both. "Tomorrow, you'll understand everything. And it won't be something you can fix, not with excuses. Not with tears." She gasped, clutching her bag tighter, realizing the gravity of her actions and the trap she walked into without knowing. I stood slowly, letting the tension reach its peak. The wind howled, the rain pelted harder, and lightning struck somewhere in the distance. The stage was set, the suspense complete. The consequences were on the horizon. And she had no idea that the life she thought she owned was about to collapse. The storm carried into the early morning, leaving the streets slick and dark, reflecting the pale light of street lamps that flickered as if warning her of what was coming. She stumbled back into the city, shoes wet and heels broken by the night, her bag slung loosely over one shoulder. Each step was heavy, reluctant, weighed down by the dread she couldn't name yet. She thought she could find safety somewhere, her apartment, her friends, anyone, but the city was empty at this hour. Even the usual hum of cars and distant sirens seemed muted, as if the world itself held its breath. Her phone buzzed once, then died. No power, no connection, no escape. She finally realized she was utterly alone. Rain clung to her hair and coat like a punishment, and every drop seemed to echo the mistakes she had made. Her arrogance, her selfishness, her disregard for life and respect, they had led her here, to the edge of her control. And she didn't even know it. She paused on a narrow bridge spanning a quiet canal, staring down at the dark water below. Reflection after reflection stared back at her, distorted and fragmented, reminding her of every choice she had ignored, every person she had disrespected, every line she had crossed. Then she heard it, a faint crunch behind her, footsteps on wet gravel. She spun around, heart hammering, expecting a stranger. But the figure that emerged from the shadows was familiar, calm, certain, in control. I stepped from the darkness, rain sliding off my shoulders, bald head glistening, full beard dripping. My eyes were locked on hers, steady, unyielding, and she froze. How did you?" she began, voice trembling, but I didn't answer. I simply let her panic grow. Let her imagination fill in the rest. Every subtle detail, the way I moved, the way I held myself, The absolute certainty in my gaze was a trap she didn't even know existed. She tried to step back, but the bridge was narrow. No escape. Her heels slipped on the wet surface, and she stumbled, gripping the railing. Rain ran down her face and into her eyes. She squinted at me, realizing her arrogance, her assumption of control, had brought her here, completely vulnerable. I thought you'd just leave it," she whispered. "I thought you'd let me." "You thought wrong," I said quietly. My voice carried over the wind and rain, calm but heavy with intent. "You assumed signing those papers meant you were safe. You assumed selfishness and disrespect could protect you. You were wrong." Her hands shook, clutching the papers she had signed earlier. She looked down, realization dawning. The signature she had begged for, the one she thought was a trivial formality, was a key. A key that would unlock consequences she had never imagined. "You don't understand," she said, panic rising, voice cracking. I didn't mean. I didn't realize." Her excuses fell flat in the face of the storm around her. Every sound, the pounding rain, the wind, the distant thunder echoed the collapse of her world. She was alone, exposed, vulnerable. I stepped closer, each motion deliberate. She flinched but could not move back further. The bridge was narrow. There was no escape. Her eyes darted, searching for someone, anyone to help her. No one. Just the night, the storm, and me. "You begged for my signature," I said softly. "And you assumed it would solve everything. But some things can't be undone." Her gaze fell to the papers in her hands. She noticed small notes, clauses, fine print she had ignored in her haste, in her arrogance. Her stomach churned as the truth began to take shape. I reached out slowly, picked up the documents from her trembling hands, and examined them with deliberate care. She stared at me, realizing that I had orchestrated the trap with precision, but she didn't yet know the full weight of it. "You don't understand yet," I said. "You think this is just about a signature, about rules, about punishment. But this is about consequences, and consequences. Catch up." Her knees buckled slightly. She sank to the wet pavement, drenched, shivering, helpless. The storm mirrored her inner turmoil, rain cascading over her as if the heavens themselves condemned her actions. She tried to speak, to argue, to bargain, but no words came. Her mind raced. Her confidence, once unshakable, had completely dissolved. I handed the papers back, letting her see the clauses she had ignored. Her eyes widened as she read, comprehension dawning slowly. She had signed her own undoing. Lightning flashed, illuminating the papers and her horrified expression. The storm crashed in her ears as she realized she had walked blindly into her own trap. Every choice she had made, every selfish thought, every careless decision, it all led here. "You wanted control," I said quietly. "You wanted to dictate the terms, but control is earned, not demanded. And when it's taken for granted, it slips away faster than you can imagine." She gasped, shivering, rain running down her face, hair plastered to her cheeks. "Please, I didn't know. I didn't realize." "I warned you," I replied. "And you didn't listen." Her hands shook as she looked at me, a mix of fear and disbelief. She didn't know yet that tomorrow, everything she had counted on would collapse. She didn't know that her life built on arrogance and disregard for others would unravel in ways she could not repair. I turned, letting her see the storm behind me, the shadows stretching long in the wet street. She was trapped in a moment of her own making, and every heartbeat carried the suspense, the inevitable consequence, the thrill of impending revelation. And in that silence, in the pounding rain, in the gusting wind, she finally understood. This was only the beginning. The storm finally began to subside, leaving streets slick with rain, reflecting the dim glow of distant streetlights. She sat on the curb, soaked to the bone, trembling from cold and fear. Her hair plastered to her face, makeup streaked, eyes wide and unseeing. She had no idea that the life she thought she controlled was already unraveling. I approached slowly, footsteps soft on the wet pavement, rain dripping from my coat. Every movement was deliberate, precise, and measured to maximize the tension, the suspense, the inevitability of what was coming. She flinched, but did not move. There was nowhere left to run. You've ruined me," she whispered, voice barely audible over the dripping water and distant rumble of the receding storm. I stopped a few feet away, letting the distance amplify her fear. "No," I said quietly. "You ruined yourself." Her eyes darted to the papers clutched in her trembling hands, the signature she thought she had begged for to gain control. Her stomach churned as comprehension dawned slowly. She had sealed her own fate, and I had done nothing more than give her the instrument to do it. You tricked me," she said, her voice rising. Panic replaced the arrogance she wore hours ago. I thought you'd never act. I thought you assumed I would be weak, that I would forgive the choices you made without consequences," I said, calm, controlled. "You assumed wrong," she gasped, looking around the empty street, realizing she had no allies, no escape. Every strategy she thought she had was gone. Her confidence crumbled as the truth sank in. The signature she had begged for didn't just finalize a routine matter. It triggered investigations, legal clauses, and contracts she had ignored in her arrogance. A police car pulled into the distance, headlights slicing through the wet mist. She hadn't expected that. The officer stepped out, holding a folder. Her eyes widened. What's that?" I held up the papers she had signed, letting her see the clauses she had overlooked. "Everything you built today, every plan you counted on, has already been undone," I said. She sank to her knees, hands trembling. No, this can't be real. I didn't know. I didn't mean." "I warned you," I interrupted softly. "I told you what was coming if you refused to respect life, if you put your desires above others. And you didn't listen." Her breathing became shallow. Rain ran down her face, mingling with tears. Every heartbeat carried dread. She tried to call someone, anyone, but her phone had died hours ago. No escape, no assistance, only consequences. The officer approached, handing her the folder with an expression of calm authority. She opened it reluctantly, scanning the contents. Her face went pale, and she stumbled backward. Every transfer, every legal misstep, every selfish decision had been documented. Every opportunity she thought she had to control her life was now stripped away. "You see?" I said, stepping closer, my voice soft but unwavering. "This isn't about anger. This isn't revenge. This is about consequences. Life doesn't forgive disregard, and actions always catch up." She sank fully to the wet pavement, face buried in her hands, finally understanding that the signature she had begged for, the arrogant assumption that I would comply blindly, had destroyed everything she counted on. You'll leave me homeless," she whispered, barely audible. I shook my head slowly. "No, I didn't do that. You did it yourself. I only allowed reality to reach you." Her sobs echoed in the empty street, mingling with the distant rumble of thunder. The storm had passed, but the chaos in her world had just begun. She had begged for a signature, thinking she could manipulate, control, and gain advantage. Instead, she had unleashed the full weight of consequences she never imagined. I stepped back, letting her sit in the silence of her reckoning. She looked up once, eyes wide and desperate, searching for anger, for confrontation, for someone to blame. She found only calm, only certainty, only the quiet truth she had ignored for too long. The night air was cold but clear. I turned slowly, walking toward the distant glow of the city lights. She watched me go, broken, humbled, realizing that arrogance and selfishness could never shield her from reality. And as I disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with the papers she had signed, The moral of the story was clear. Actions have consequences. Choices have weight. And those who fail to respect life, love, and responsibility will face the results of their own making. She would remember this night forever, not because I yelled, not because I fought, but because I allowed truth, inevitability, and consequence to unfold. And that, she realized, was far more powerful than any argument, any plea, or any regret she could muster.